Welcome to day 3. This day is all about the power of setting goals. Now, your mind is something called a cybernetic organism. Cybernetics comes from the Greek word kybernetikos, which basically means a steerman or a good pilot. So a cybernetic organism is something that wants to steer toward an outcome. So it's goal-oriented. It needs a direction to go in. I often say to people that if you don't know where you're going, well, don't be surprised if you go nowhere fast. Now, when it comes to setting goals, which is the direction, the purpose that your whole life gets driven towards, there's an interesting and unfortunately urban myth about setting goals. Some people know it as the Harvard goal-setting study, some known as the Yale goal-setting study. Essentially, this myth actually reveals some important truths about goal setting. The idea was that they asked a bunch of Harvard or Yale undergraduates if they wrote down their goals. And then 10 years later, they were meant to have followed up and discovered that the 7% of people who did say that they had goals actually outperformed the 93% that didn't have goals. In other words, those that had goals and wrote them down would systematically outperform in happiness, success, life, wealth, all the different measures, those people who didn't have goals and didn't write them down. Unfortunately, it's an urban myth. It didn't happen. Yale has actually done extensive research through its archives to figure out if that kind of study ever occurred, and it didn't. However, the importance of it is still in the principle. The goals allow you to reach better things. If you are goalless, then you're basically hoping that life will give you some things, but you can't actually make any opportunities happen. If you have no goal, then your reticular activating system doesn't know what to look for. Remember, the power of self-hypnosis only starts arising when you start changing the unconscious blueprints. Instead of having old grandparents, you have young grandparents. Your idea of old age changes, and so you can have a youthful, vibrant old age which lasts a long time rather than a short, fast decline. The same is true of anything that you want. The point of setting goals is that it primes your unconscious mind, this targeting system, to start getting the things you want in exactly the same way as accidentally buying a new car or buying a new dress, accidentally prime the reticular activating system to look for those things as well. So you get to do it now, but for the things that you want. So that you start noticing opportunities to get more of it and start following them. Now remember, we're betting on the tortoise, not the hare. Now the difference is that the hare wants to go for the straight lines, to go quickly, put the energy and all that sort of stuff into it, and that's great. By all means, do all of that. The point about the tortoise, though, is the tortoise has a different way of doing it. It has what's called a picaresque adventure. Instead of going the straight line, they'll turn left and then go around a little adventure there, or go right and go on another adventure there. And somewhere along those lines, what you then realize is you'll make a connection or an opportunity arises, which is going to actually advance your goal in ways you could never conceive of before. So when you start setting goals, and particularly you start implanting those goals into the unconscious blueprint so that it starts finding paths to it, your responsibility on the conscious level is to start paying attention to those little hunches or intuitions or instincts, so that unlike the unlucky person that actually saw a $100 bill stuck in the sidewalk and shook his head thinking it's too good to be true and walked off without even investigating it, you don't become that person. You become the person that sees something and goes, well, something just caught my attention, I don't know what it is. You look, you get closer, you examine it and go, oh my God, I'm glad I wasted the time to stop and look at that drain, because now I'm $100 richer. That's what you need to start doing. It really comes down to trusting your unconscious. At first, results seem to come really slow and you're not quite sure where they're coming from, but that process speeds up. The more you trust your unconscious, the more you get used to it, the quicker and easier it becomes. Think of it a bit like learning to drive a car all over again. If you're anything like me, the first time I drove a car, it took forever. I mean, there's so many things, so many concepts for me to hold in my mind that just crawling along at 2 miles an hour seemed like I was whistling down a racetrack at 100 miles an hour. Why? Well, there's so many things for me to keep track of. Now, over time, I've gained better at it. So crawling at 2 miles an hour didn't really do it for me anymore. Now I can go 30, 40, 50, 100 miles an hour, and I'm fine. I mean, the same happened to me again not too long ago when I was invited to go on a racetrack or a racing event. I'm sitting in the car, and I know to drive normally on normal roads and motorways. Now, of course, race driving, it just ups the ante a little bit. So at first, it seemed like a real slow progress, but then something strange happened. I slept overnight, I woke up the next day, got in the car, drove, and I drove a perfect lap the very first time. It seemed that everything I had learned in the previous night, or the previous day, had actually had a chance to be absorbed by my unconscious overnight. The blueprint changed. And now whizzing around at top rate of speed and doing complex turns was actually relatively straightforward for me. Now, doesn't mean I'm a crazy race driver just after 2 days of training, but it does mean there's a significant shift, and it takes trust in the tortoise mind for that shift to occur. So initially, allow things to be slow and take their own pace, take their own time. Don't be in a hurry, and trust your own conscience. You'll often be the last person to realize just how much you are changing. The final thing to say about goals, and particularly when using goals to change your blueprint at the unconscious level, is a 21-day rule. We mentioned this briefly on the very first day. The 21-day rule is very simple. You want to take a new theme, a new idea, a new project you're working on, and install that at the unconscious level over the course of 21 days. That means you repeat it for 21 days. You do it at least once a day, maybe twice, no more than 3 times a day. You'll sit down and you'll focus on that particular goal. You'll go through the tack and cave process that we've talked about in day 2. And during the cave part of the process, you'll affirm and visualize the goal. We'll show you more about how to do that tomorrow. And you'll do that for 21 days straight. Now, you go longer, 30, 40. Some people have been going long as 6 months. How do you know when to stop? Well, we'll talk more about that. But for the moment, the minimum you're looking at is 21 days. Incidentally, that's why at the end of yesterday, I recommended that you take the awakening of the power of self-hypnosis induction that I created for you, and you listen for that for 21 days. If you listen to that for 21 days, and at the end of it, you come back out of hypnosis and you put yourself back in very quickly yourself, you'll not only have conditioned yourself to respond to self-hypnosis powerfully, but you'll know you can do it on your own anytime you wish. That's a very powerful place to be in. Now, before we get into the actual goal-setting method, which is very quick and very simple to do, I'd like to talk a little bit about setting the right goal. How do you know what goal to set? Well, chances are we mostly have, problems here or there that we must fix. We're going to have more dates, find a person of our dreams, get married, find an ideal job, have more income, those sort of things. And the problem is, often the conscious mind has too limited understanding of things. So the goal it thinks is good for you may not actually be the best goal for you. In other words, you're in the right tracks, but you haven't thought far ahead enough. I'll give you a personal example. For me, my goal was always to be a lawyer. I'd seen these hotshot lawyers on TV, and that was a blueprint I had inside my mind. I thought if I were for the best law firm in the world, or at least the best law firm in the country, was a global law firm, then I'll have the same lifestyle. I'll have excitement, I'll have travel, I'll have love and romance, I'll have stimulation, I'll have wealth, everything would be there. Now, of course, the reality is a lot more mundane. And the reality of working in a law firm, whilst I enjoyed it and a great time, it didn't hit my own life criteria of adventure, of travel, of learning new things, of meeting new cultures. All these things weren't really being met by my time as a lawyer. So whilst I had been tremendously successful in terms of the goal, it actually failed in terms of where I really wanted. So what I want to introduce you is the concept of the true purpose of a goal. For example, some people think, well, self-hypnosis can't make everything happen. Like, you can't have a short, small person be an all-star basketball player. Now, whether or not a physically small person might be a great basketball player is neither here nor there. What's more important is, why would you want to be an all-star basketball player? What is the true purpose of it? Is it so that you feel like a champion? Well, how about work on feeling like a champion and letting basketball take care of the rest? How is it so that you have more influence and authority? Is it to pay your way through college? What is it you hope that this goal, this dream, this ambition will do for you? That's your true purpose. Now, you'll know you've hit it because you'll get tremendously energized. Again, right now, although I have nothing to do with my life and law anymore, I really don't have any legal type things to do anymore, I feel like I did when I was watching that TV shows and those TV lawyers from before. I am surrounded by amazing people with great talents, fresh, smart people. I have a business that challenges me to think every day and be creative and not just make stuff up, but actually make it work and be practical. I'm surrounded by people that I can genuinely help and be a force for good with. I get to travel every 3 to 6 months. I'm living in a new country. I meet new people. Now, I'm not saying this to brag. I'm just telling you this because I've achieved, if you like, the goal behind the goal. I never wanted to be a lawyer. What I wanted is what I thought being a lawyer would get me. That's what to aim for. When you aim for that, then your unconscious mind can give you what you want as well as what you need. Now, essentially what we're saying here is you want to let go of the content of a goal and get used to the form of it. In other words, you want something which is as good as this or better. Something that will get me everything that this goal I think will give me and beyond that. So focus on the energy, the vitality in the system, the thing behind that, and make that your true purpose. Make that your true goal. And you really won't go far wrong. So I've introduced you to a very simple goal-setting formula. A lot of you may be familiar with it. It's very simple, and really I don't want to spend too much time on the actual process setting goals, partly because there's just so much wonderful information out there already, and partly because you don't need it. The formula is SMART goals. SMART is an acronym that stands for simple, measurable, affect, reasonable, and timed. Each one of those things are criteria that you want to have the goal conform to make sure there's a form of a goal that you actually achieve and you want to achieve. Now, the SMART goals are a rough guide only. You can work most plans, most dreams and desires through it and really shape them up. Remember, when you're setting goals, you're now working with the awesome power of the unconscious mind, with all that latent ability you have inside, stuff you've never even tapped before in your life, which means you get to dream bigger. You get to have more of what you want, more good things. Sure, it'll take you a bit of effort, it'll take a bit of time, because we're betting the tortoise, not the hare. The tortoise will get us there. The 21-day cycles will be the minimum. But step by step, you will get there. And ironically, as you resolve some parts of your life, others automatically fall in line because the whole blueprint starts naturally evolving and growing again. So SMART goals, let's take this to those 5 elements step by step. First of all, we have something simple. You want to have a goal that you can grasp hold of. You don't want to have a goal that's so complex that says something like, you'll have this and this person will do that and then that person will do this and then I'll feel this way and then the other person will do that. It's kind of like trying to plan a conversation ahead of time. You just don't know where life is going to take you. Keep it simple, keep it direct, and just something you can grasp inside your mind. Another problem which violates simplicity is you try to do too much sometimes. For example, you may have a sense of, maybe my love life isn't in great shape and I've also had some problems with clients and, I could have more friends perhaps as well. So you decide to have like this mega power goal, which will take care of all these things at the same time. So you'll say, my friendships and love life and charisma is increasing and I have power and I do this and all the others. Now, at that point, if it starts getting convoluted, it's not really simple anymore. So either go beyond it into the true purpose, which goes back to something simplicity. In other words, the true purpose is for you to feel powerful and charismatic. Great. There's your true purpose. The other things becomes results of that true purpose. Or bring it right down again. Say, well, I'm just going to focus on friendships. I want to make really good connections with people, emotional connections. And when I have that, I'll build the next piece. Both of those can work. Sometimes you have to scale things up to get progress. Sometimes you scale them down to get progress. You'll know with experience which ones will work. Why? Because with experience, you get to trust your unconscious. You'll start trusting your instinct, and your unconscious, through your gut instincts, will tell you which one of the goal-setting methods will work better. Initially, don't worry about it. Go for one, try it out for a few weeks, then notice what happens, and then start adapting it and changing it to make it fit what you want to have. What you need right now is experience and plenty of it. Next phase is the measurable. Can you measure your goal? Do you know when you've achieved it? Now, part of measurable is something you can kind of violate a little bit when you have becoming goals. I'm becoming happier, healthier, and so on. Well, how do you know when you're happy? How do you know when you're healthy? You gotta have some mechanism of knowing, hey, I'm achieving it now. This is working. I might still want more of it, but it's still working for me. So, for example, a classic example of this is affluence. If you want to be wealthy, what the hell does wealthy mean? Well, wealthy is $2 extra, $10, 100, 1,000, 100,000, a million. How much is wealthy? So make sure it's measurable so you get a sense of, this is really more for your conscious mind to get a sense of, wow, I'm really making progress here. And also for you as the captain of the ship to check that the crew's actually doing the job it's meant to be doing. Because if it's not doing its job, it's either time to have a talk to them again and say, hey guys, sort this out. Or more likely, you have to do a bit of troubleshooting. You either have to change the message a little bit so that they understand it better and actually know what you're talking about. Or you may have to actually clean up some things. We'll talk about cleaning up goals that have failed in the past and how to do that in a little bit of time. A stands for affect. Affect means emotion. You have to feel strongly about something. If you want the goal, you'll get it. Emotions are the fuel that drives us. Emotions are the fuel that gets goals achieved. No emotions, no fuel, the car didn't go anywhere. So you have to have affect. If your goal has no emotion in it, chances are it's the wrong goal. Here's a classic example of what I mean. I'm going to study for this test. I'm going to remember everything in this textbook. Now, if that thought leaves you totally deflated, like, oh, I don't know. That's basically something you should do. It's not really going to get you where you want to go, or rather, it has no energy inside it. So chances are your unconscious is going to respond to the energy, to the emotion, and go, I doesn't really want that. I'll give something else instead. So how do you turn that around? Well, you put emotion back in by going back to true purpose. The true purpose is not to memorize the textbook. The true purpose may not even be to pass the exam. The true purpose might be how great you'll feel once you've passed the exam and everyone thinks you're smart. The true purpose might be how amazing you'll feel when you land that dream job because you were smart enough to pass that exam. That's your true purpose. That's what gets you energized. That's what you get in touch with when studying. That's what you inject into your revision practice so when you're studying, it all gets tied up and carried away by this enthusiasm. Every item you learn in the textbook now is one step closer to being that person, to having that dream job. Suddenly, it becomes a breeze. Now, I know a man who did this, a man who is from the Middle East, spoke not a word of Spanish at the time. This is back in the 1980s. And the only place he could really learn medicine and study medicine in a Western's resistant was in the university in Madrid. This man went to a Spanish course from scratch, spent a month in a Spanish course, and by then his Spanish was good enough to roll in medical school. Spent another month over the summer in that course, and by that time his Spanish was so fluent, even Spanish native speakers couldn't tell the difference. Now, you think that man was motivated? You better believe it. He wasn't motivated to learn Spanish. What he was motivated by was the dream of becoming a doctor. And that gave him enough emotional energy that his unconscious moved mountains for him, made him perfect the language in 2 months, which for most people is an impossibility. Next, talk about reasonable. Now, reasonable is an interesting one. Reasonable basically means something that's within your control. Now, the reason I say it's interesting is because strange things happen, and sometimes the unreasonable can be put into your blueprint and still occurs. When I say reasonable, I don't mean things like, I want to grow wings and jump off buildings and fly. However, it's reasonable that you actually find people in your life that can help you with the next step. Let's say, for example, you want to go to college, but you can't afford it. Well, what might be reasonable is that you find a job that you can get the money to earn the money to go there. But it could also be reasonable that someone finds you, takes a liking to you, and becomes your mentor, someone who will sponsor you through university. This actually happened to my cousin. He found a mentor who was so impressed with him, he said, hey, young talent has to be fostered. He paid for an entire 2-year master's program, huge expense, out of his own pocket, and never asked for the money back. Why? It's his philanthropic approach, to do something good for the world and to invest in someone he believes in. So those things are possible, but It means you change your attitude. In order to make that possible, you have to be likable enough that the other guy would want to do that for him. So when I say reasonable, don't dream small because you think it's more realistic. When I say reasonable, I just want to make sure you make it within bounds of safety and naturalness, and always remember the true purpose. Go beyond the purpose for the true purpose, because sometimes life can surprise you with an even better solution than anything your conscious mind could ever come up with. Finally, again, something which can be broken a little bit is the idea of timing. Now, you want to give yourself a reasonable amount of time to achieve something by. If you've never spoken a foreign language, let's say you want to learn Spanish, and you want to put yourself in trance and say, okay, when I wake up tomorrow morning, I'll speak Spanish perfectly. Do you think timing is going to be an issue there? I think so. It's not reasonable. Your mind hasn't got time to adapt and acquire those abilities. Now, if you've been spending the last year in a Spanish-speaking country, or you used to speak Spanish as a kid but forgot all about it, that might be more reasonable. But remember, we're betting on the tortoise, not the hare. Give yourself a time frame so that you have a sense of pressure that you can go with it. But at the same time, allow yourself time to actually be able to grow into the function, into the role. Dream big and allow the dream to come and find you. So, with those thoughts, I'd like for you to sit down and choose a couple of things and turn them into SMART goals. Now, you won't necessarily work on those straight away, but I want you to actually get used to the process of setting a SMART goal and feeling fantastic as a result. You really get to dream these things up and enjoy the process of goal setting. Setting goals is actually an incredibly exciting thing to do because you're getting back in touch with that creativity, that powerful energy inside you that gets stagnated when you're too, quote-unquote, reasonable, when you conform too much to the world and get your expectations to match the world. Remember, a reasonable person will adapt himself to fit the world. An unreasonable person will make the world fit him, adapt itself to him, which means the unreasonable person gets to make big dreams come true. Be unreasonable and make those big dreams come true. Go ahead and do that now, and I'll see you on the next track. Hey, welcome back. I'd like to now run you through the top 5 reasons why goals fail, so that in the track after this one, we can start solving those problems with the power of self-hypnosis. These are the 5 most common saboteurs and most common reasons why goals would fail. Number 1, and we've already mentioned this a few times, it's getting obsessed by the form, by the content of the goal, or the form of the goal, rather than its essence. So for me, I think the example was, I was obsessed about becoming a lawyer. I became a lawyer, but I didn't allow the true goal to take place. So had I stuck there, had I become obsessed about staying a lawyer and just becoming more of a lawyer to get even more out of it, well, guess what would have happened? I'd have started becoming more miserable, more de-energized, more unenthused, possibly even get fired at the end because just my work wouldn't be good enough. So I would lose everything. Why? Because I got obsessed about how the goal should be, rather than turning it over to my unconscious and saying, hey, this is what's important. This is the true purpose. I want a life of excitement, of adventure, of cool people, of intellectual challenge, of doing something worthwhile, of solving problems. That's what I want. Now, I happen to think it might be as a lawyer, but hey, if you can give me something better than that, go for it. The next version is lack of energy. If your goals, or if you have no motivation to go and do something, if you just get slowed down by something, you think about your goal and it's like, oh God, I gotta do this and I want to do it, but I don't really have enough energy for it. Well, then there's a problem. There's a problem with desire. It might be a problem with the goal. You may have actually the wrong goal. So you again have to go back to true purpose in some ways. Or it might be a question of effort. Just because things become easy and natural and flow doesn't mean you have to put energy into them. So you may need to do more focus and get your attention sorted out, or your desire sorted out, or to test the actual goal itself. Number 3 on the list is interference. Interference is basically the law of reverse effect. It states that the more you want something, the harder it's going to be, purely because if your conscious mind starts interfering, starts trying to do things that your unconscious mind was actually meant to be doing, it starts getting in the way, it starts interfering, it starts ruining the job. It's like driving a car all over again. When you try to do it consciously, mirror signal maneuvers, clutch, forward, back, stop, seeing other cards, all that sort of stuff. Your conscious mind's overwhelmed. It doesn't have enough ability to keep track. 5 to 9 bits of information really get absorbed too quickly. But now you're doing it unconsciously. In fact, you know you've driven home from work at times or from some place you know well, and you lose half the journey, most of the journey. Or you know that you started and someone on the lines, you got home, and you really don't know how you did in between. And yet you stopped at traffic lights, you avoided the traffic laws, you drove safely, unconsciously. Your unconscious mind did it for you. So, if there's interference, we're going to have to find some mechanisms for getting past interference so that you don't activate the law of reverse effect. Next, we have doubts. Now, doubt is something very interesting. Doubting basically means that you've activated the gatekeeper again. Doubting is the gatekeeper coming out of his thumb and going, oh, here's an objection, or let's quickly throw this out the door. What doubts basically do is they put in a contradictory message. As soon as you've done the good work and a doubt comes in, what happens? Well, the good work gets undone. You have a message that says, we can achieve this. You have a message that says, I can't achieve this. They cancel each other out, and you're left with whatever you had before. So we're going to have to figure out ways or how to overcome doubt. And we'll talk about that in a moment's time. Finally, we have internal blocks. Internal blocks is basically down to conflict between what you want consciously and what your unconscious mind wants. Remember, the blueprint is a big blueprint. And there's a lot of things that your unconscious mind wants and needs to protect you, to look after you. Let's take an example of something. Let's say you want to be slim, trim, and healthy. Now let's say that for some reason something happened in your past. Your unconscious mind has got the idea that slim and healthy people get picked on in some way, and life becomes harder for them. So that it's safer to be fat. Well, guess what? If you try and change that blueprint and just be slim, trim, and healthy, it's like telling the unconscious mind, hey, I want to be unsafe. The unconscious mind's going to go, no way, Jose, I'm going to look after you. I'm going to keep you nice and fat so you can be nice and healthy. Now, logically, it doesn't make sense, but unconscious mind reasons through a different set of logic. So what we need to do is to overcome that conflict so that the unconscious mind harmonizes with what you want, which is really the true purpose, so that both of you get what you want. You're protected, you're safe, good things are happening, and you can be slim, trim, and healthy. So these are the 5 saboteurs. We're going to have a look in a moment on the next track on how to deal with them. Welcome back. Now that we know what the 5 saboteurs are, how can we actually fix them? Well, let's take each one at a time and focus on that. The first one is this idea of getting obsessed with the form or the content of your goal. The simple answer to that is just let go. Now, that's sometimes easier said than done, because if your conscious mind's really kind of married to the idea, well, how do you let go of it? Well, the first thing you do is start activating the true purpose. You see, the true purpose takes you beyond what you think is the goal, the form of it, into what you really want. Do you want to be an all-star basketball player, or do you want to have the attention, the love, the income, the connections, the influence that all that brings you? Even if you go beyond that, what does all that give you? Peace of mind, happiness, and enthusiasm, a sense of a life worth living. Surely those are the things worth aiming for rather than, playing basketball. Because let's face it, you could be an all-star basketball player and hate your life because you have to get up and stupid o'clock in the morning to train hard. You get injured. You get pushed around the place. You have to work hard when you really want to be relaxing with your friends. You can't drink and go out and party as hard as you want to. Maybe the sacrifices aren't worth it. And what if, instead of being a miserable basketball player, you could play basketball and enjoy it and have this fantastic life all around it? Which one do you want? Well, chances are, if the true purpose is to have this fantastic life, well, then you can let go of the all-starness, enjoy basketball for what it is, and have the great life. Now, another way to do this is to learn how to drift at the unconscious level. Well, Dave talked more about this and on day 6. On day 6, we're going to be basically teaching you specific methods on how to trust your unconscious, how to let the unconscious mind take over the goal-setting process and the goal-getting process, so you don't get too obsessed about it. For the moment, just enjoy the true purpose, let yourself drift within that, and when we come on to day 6, will have some specialized methods, full methods, that will take you way beyond your ability to hold on too tightly. Number 2 is the idea of energy. What if there's no energy or enthusiasm in your goal? Well, the first thing to do is check your own state when you're doing self-hypnosis. Remember, self-hypnosis starts with the cave process. Everything you do up to cave is just getting you there. The C in cave is a convincer. In this case, it's getting in touch with your right arm and making your right arm relax because you want it to relax. Getting to feel heavy because you want it to feel heavy. Now, when your arm relaxes and feels heavy because you're repeating those words to yourself and really getting the meaning behind those words, guess what? You've responded to your first suggestion. In order to respond to that suggestion, it means the conditions must be right for you to respond to suggestions. So, when you're in the right state, well, at that point, you can get the job done. So the first thing to check is whether or not your self-hypnosis process is actually being done in the right state. Is your convincer fully active? Because sometimes, just by thinking too much about what you want, it kicks you out. It gets your conscious mind engaged again, going, oh boy, I already want this, which means the guardian of the gate, the gatekeeper comes back up again, and of course, can start sapping the energy out and going, oh, no, we're not doing this one. The next thing to check is your focus, your own attention. You might be too tired, in which case, just rest, go to sleep. That's fine. Resting is a good thing. You might be too distracted, in which case, you may need to train your attention. Train your attention to remain on what you want. Distractions about overcoming distractions about focusing through something. If your mind goes off track, come right back, come right back, come right back again. Again, the convincer is a great one to train yourself away from distractions because you're focusing on the arm. That's your focus of attention there. You are allowing something to arise. You're evoking an experience of heaviness and relaxation. And again, all distractions become a sideline at that point. The next thing to check is your desire. Do you actually want this goal? Or is one of those should goals? Remember, if you don't really want it, if it's a should goal, like memorizing a textbook for an exam, or then go back to the true purpose. Linking with that, the juice is always in the true purpose. And when you link the true purpose to the goal, even a dull job, for example, memorizing a textbook, suddenly becomes interesting and fascinating again. It has energy back inside it. Why? Because you've linked it to the true purpose. You know that it's not about memorizing a textbook, it's about living a life of happiness and freedom. Finally, check for competing thoughts. Remember, focusing is the key thing to being able to open that window inside your mind. If you have competing thoughts, that basically gives your gatekeeper a chance to come in through the back entrance and say, we're going to cancel this one out. So keep your thoughts entirely on the subject. Check your desire, click back in with the true purpose, and make sure your focus is on the point. If your focus is distracted, at least at the initial point, then bring yourself back until you can focus again properly. Next, we come on to interference. Interference is basically an overactive conscious mind, which brings with it the gatekeeper and, trying too hard. It's kind of like the captain getting out and trying to push the boat. He's so enthusiastic, but let's face it, the captain's not going to go very far if he's trying to push the boat. That's not how boats were designed to work. So if you're interfering too much, again, the first thing to do is check the state. If you're checking the state, can you have a convincer? Can you just tell your arm to relax and relaxes? Not because you make it relax, but just because you're telling it to. Can you go through that drifting phase where you just let go and let your mind take you wherever it goes? That drifting phase is important for a reason. It's because it makes your intellect get away from the idea, which creates a space in which your unconscious mind can do the job that you want it to do. The next thing to do is just to relax and let it happen. Again, remember, you are not the one that's doing it. It's your unconscious mind. If you could do it consciously, well, let's face it, you'd have done it already. You wouldn't need self-hypnosis to do it. So if you're using self-hypnosis on something, well, surely that means that it's because your unconscious mind needs to do it. So let go of it. Just tell your unconscious mind what you want, let it go, let it happen. By the way, it's a great practice to sleep on it. So do some self-hypnosis, and immediately afterwards, just go straight to sleep. whilst you're sleeping, your unconscious mind gets to integrate the lessons, the learnings, bring up activities and abilities. So by the time you awaken in the morning, significant changes and advances have been made. The key thing to going to sleep straight away is that you can't interfere with it even after you've finished. Because you do your process, you come back out, and rather than thinking about it and obsessing and kind of trying to dig at it and trying to make it happen even more, you're basically going straight to sleep. Your conscious mind goes offline even more space, more freedom for the unconscious to do what it does, and you're on a winner. On day 6, we're going to focus on 4 specific strategies to do exactly these kinds of things. So don't worry if you don't think you know exactly how to deal with it right now. Here are the ideas, and on day 6, you'll actually have an experience of putting those things into action. Next is, again, the true purpose. Come back to the true purpose. Always rest in the true purpose. If you find your conscious mind interfering, go back to how the true purpose feels. When you can feel it, and just rest in that feeling, let that feeling guide you, then you don't need to do anything else. Remember, the conscious mind tries to put a plan in steps and say, okay, step 1, I'll do this, step 2, I'll do this, step 3, I'll do this. If that's not working for you, that means the conscious minds, the conscious steps are the wrong steps. So just drift in that feeling and know that your unconscious mind will find those steps for you. Now, you won't necessarily know where those steps are until after you've taken them. That's the beauty of this. If you trust your unconscious, it means you can't interfere anymore. So once you've succeeded at taking the step, I mean, I've done this myself. There are so many things I've done which would have scared me to even think about beforehand. But just because I've kind of found myself in the middle of it and I just kind of did it and muddled my way through it, I turn back and look at it and go, wow, where did that come from? How did I do that? Had I chosen to do it on purpose, I would have scared myself silly doing it, because there's no way my conscious mind has any idea on how to do that. Lastly, if you find it difficult to do all those other things, to drift and all those other things, just focus on your convincer, on the arm being heavy and how it feels being heavy. Because basically, that's something you have made happen, and it's work. If it's working for you, that's enough to get your conscious mind out of the way. Well, again, on day 6, we'll look at some more sophisticated ways of making that work for you. Okay, now, let's turn our attention to those tricky little doubts. Basically, doubts come in many different forms. It's usually a sign that the gatekeeper has been activated, which means that you just go back to the idea of the convincer. Once you're responding by making maybe your left arm heavy or your left leg heavy and so on, it means that the gatekeeper is back to sleep again and you can kind of carry on with what you're doing. Sometimes a doubt arises because you have a conflicting thought. Basically, the rule of thumb is this. Where your will and your imagination conflict, your imagination always wins. Because your imagination is something that stimulates the unconscious mind, and that's where the big juice is at. That's where it all happens. That's where the action is. So when your will and imagination are conflicting, well, guess what? The minute your attention shifts, your unconscious mind wins out. That's why willpower will never help people stay on a diet. Because the minute they think about something else, they find themselves in the fridge, opening it up, and reaching out for that chocolate cake. I mean, it's happened to me, it's happened to you probably. You're bored, you open the fridge, you catch yourself, go, oh, I'm not going to look in there. 5 minutes later, you open the fridge again. 5 minutes later, you did it again. Like, there's going to be something different in the fridge the next time round. No, the fact is that you're bored. And for 5 minutes, your attention span can distract you, get you to show something else. But when you kind of find a slight chink in the armor, the unconscious program takes over, the fridge opens up, and if you're not careful, you're going to start eating stuff you don't want to be eating. So use the imagination to help you rather than to fight it. We're going to show you how to do that tomorrow when we come on to the suggestion tactics. The next thing to do with doubts or any kind of interference is you can actually burn the energy off. For example, if you want to, let's say you want to have a hot date and you want to ask someone out, but you're a little bit afraid. Fear, doubt, all these things are coming on at the same time. Now, instead of fighting that fear and saying, I'm not afraid, challenge it. Let it burn through. Say, okay, I am a confident individual. I deserve this date. Now, at that point, the energy spikes up and says, no, you're not. You're a loser. You'll fail. Like you did all these other times before. Remember, that's your gatekeeper speaking here. At which point, you just smile and observe and say, is that the best you've got? Come on, do more than that. At which point, you reaffirm again. I deserve this hot date, and I'm going to get it. And again, that feeling comes up. It might even be stronger this time, in which case you go, okay, good shot, keep going. Come on, you can do better than that. And you keep doing that. And eventually what happens is the whole state just vanishes. The energy of it gets released. You're burning through the energy by challenging it. Now, if you try and push it away, go, oh, I don't want to think about that, I don't want to feel it, what you're basically doing is you're packing energy away. You're closing that little bubble up and saying, all right, I'm not looking at that anymore. And that's fine for day-to-day living. But when you want to make a change, you want to release that bubble. It's kind of like having a blister where you want to prick the skin just enough to let the pressure out, and then the skin can heal again. You're going to let the emotions out, and then the skin, or rather the emotional well-being, can heal again. Here's an example of it happening to me. I was at a party, and should we say something unexpected and not so pleasant happened. And I suddenly found myself in a foul mood. I'm in a really terrible mood. Now everyone around me is having a great time, and I'm in a foul mood, and I really don't want to be in a foul mood. So first I'm fighting to, put a grin on my face and just do okay and get back in the groove of things, but it's not happening. Why? Well, my imagination, my will of perfecting. I'd seen a person that was sparking off my imagination in all kinds of unpleasant ways, and as a result, guess what? I was not a happy chappy. So here's what I did. I went outside, calmed my mind, created a receptive mind. And I went, okay, if I'm going to be grumpy, go on, do your worst. Now, at that point, I got grumpy, and I got pretty upset, and I said, okay, more than that. And I got even more upset, and notice, I am not feeding the imagination. I'm paying attention only to the emotion. This is an important thing. I'm not letting the imagination escalate out of all proportion. I'm just going, here's the same situation. Come on, do your worst. Now, it took me about half an hour. I said, come on, do more than that. Do more than that. After about 10, 12 minutes, the emotions spiked and started receding. After 30 minutes, because this was a pretty big thing, it was gone. At that point, I would just sit there, lift on my own, going, okay, I guess that's gone now. I went back inside. I had the time of my life. So this is a great way of draining the emotion of something just by letting it be, letting it do its thing, just knowing that it's kind of slowly draining out of your system, and eventually it'll go. Now, will that be it done and dusted? Will you never feel upset again? No. There might be other stuff for you to do. You may want to spend sessions specifically, a whole month specifically in clearing up that particular hot button you have inside yourself. But no longer is interfering with you. The problem is when you're doing something like a self-suggestion, like, I deserve this date, I deserve love in my life, and you have this emotion coming out and conflicting with it. Worth doing is creating a dirty goal, which means that the more you suggest yourself or affirm one thing, the more the unconscious blueprint is going to be filled with anger, resentment, fear, frustration, whatever it happens to be, so that even should you achieve the goal, even should you get the person of your dream, what's going to happen is you're going to be grumpy around that person, because that's what the blueprint has. When you have person of dreams, the feeling to have is grumpy. That's the conditioning process you've created inside your mind. You're going to break that so that when you achieve your dreams, you can actually feel the true purpose of them, and you don't actually get in your own way. Of course, that last thing I said is very important. Jumping to the true purpose. If the things you're doing right now are causing doubts, go beyond the doubts. Go to the true purpose. Reconnect with that energy and allow that energy to wash through the doubts, and I'll wash them clean away. So these are different strategies you can use to basically burn off doubts, burn through doubts, go beyond them and wash them away. Finally, we have those internal blocks. Doubt is kind of a version of that internal blocking. It's what I call a dirty goal. A dirty goal is where your conscious and your unconscious mind are in conflict. Essentially, it's the same situation we just discussed a moment ago. I'm thinking of one thing, this is the goal that I want, this is the dream that I'm trying to make active, but for whatever reason, my unconscious mind is going, okay, well, in the past we've been thinking about these sort of things, you've had pain, you've had frustration, you've had anger, so let's have more of it. Or it's saying, well, actually, in the past you failed, I'm going to protect you from it by not allowing that to happen. Or it's going to say something along the lines of, actually, I'm not ready to do that yet because in order to get that goal, you're going to have to let go of this, and I kind of like this. So depending on what it is, the first thing I always try and do is burn off the energy, see if it'll go away. So if I feel like a nervous connection along the lines of like, oh, I'll fail. For example, I have a new project. I'm going to teach a new seminar, And my unconscious is going like, oh, I don't know about this. This is maybe biting off more than I can chew. The first thing I do is burn through it. And notice what happens once the emotion is gone. This is back to the secret of ASP that we talked about right at the beginning, the axis state principle. Never make an important life decision when you're feeling bad. The unhappy room is not a great place to be choosing resources or to making decisions about your life. Why? Because you make bad decisions. You make decisions about being more unhappy. When you're in the happy room, that's the time to make good decisions. When you're in the calm room, the focused room, any one of those other states is better than feeling unhappy, depressed, frustrated, angry, and so on. So the first thing to do is see if you can burn the energy off. Now, if you can't burn the energy off, or there's still some kind of conflict going on, or for whatever reason, you're burning the energy off, but you're still not getting any closer to your goal, then on day 5, I'm going to show you a very special method called the power pendulum to actually connect right back into the unconscious and actually resolve the conflict there. You're essentially going to do the same thing that a hypnotherapist does with you when he does a regression, only you're going to do it in a totally safe way, whether you can guide yourself through it. It takes a little bit of time to do it. It takes a little bit of persistence and commitment, but it's worth every ounce of effort you put into it. Also, the day 6 strategies come back into this. You can always create, especially something called the big drift, which is one of the strategies we talk about on day 6. You can always go through a process where you actually, let's say to your unconscious, okay, if you're so smart, you come up with a way of making this happen without me having to feel bad about it. And at that point, your unconscious goes, okay, the instructions are change the blueprint so that he can have Buick's cake and eat it too. Okay, here's how we'll do it. So now, the very same creativity that you have at the unconscious level when you're dreaming. I mean, who plans their dreams? But those dreams are creative, fresh, and new every night because you have this immense capacity for creativity. And now you're going to tap into it to get it to actually help you rather than resist you. Again, all the things we said about at the other times is still true. The day 6 strategies still work. Jumping to the true purpose is going to be a great way to go beyond the limitations of how you think you'll have to achieve it. You see, sometimes a conflict arises because consciously you think the only way to achieve it is to do this, and you don't, that can't work. So your unconscious mind to protect you goes, well, okay, that's the only way to do it, and that thing can't work. Well, I guess we'll just have to avoid doing it. Whereas if you go back to true purpose, then you can actually go beyond the limitations built into the goal that you created in the first place. If your true purpose is to be educated and you have some kind of problem with reading, well, then there's other ways to get around it. You can listen to audios. You can go to lectures. You can talk to people who've been there before and learn from them. Now, those are things you might not have realized when you're thinking about, go read, go read, go read. When you let go of the idea of reading, you become educated in other ways. But of course, reading is another thing that you can just focus on. And then again, if there's something negative attached to that, there's other ways that you can resolve it. For example, the power pendulum on day 5, the day 6 strategies, or just by focusing on that as a step before you go on with the actual whole education process. Above all else, learn to sleep on it. But sleep on the right thing. Don't sleep on the wrong thing. Too often we go to bed frustrated, angry, and upset, and you sleep as a way of calming down again. The problem is, if you're angry and upset, the last thought through your mind primes your unconscious mind for all kind of experiences to have in sleep. So if you take stress to sleep with you, guess what's going to happen? That's right, more stress. So as a rule of thumb, clear your mind, breathe, relax, think of the true purpose, you get back in touch with the energy of what you really want, then go to sleep. And as you sleep, allow your unconscious mind to arrange things to suit you. So, those are the fixes for the 5 saboteurs. As soon as you're ready, go ahead and move on to the next track. In the next track, I'm going to take you through, once again, the general outlines for the practice session, for a self-hypnosis session for you. Again, I'm just going to give you the guidelines. You want to fill in the content yourself. Once you've been all the way through, you will do the whole process again on your own. Just so you have one example of it with me guiding you through a process, one example of you taking yourself through the process. You're responsible for your own learning. Of course, let me give you the hypnotic warning. This session is hypnotic. So, before you listen to the next track, Make sure you're not driving a car or operating any kind of machinery. Just find yourself in a safe, comfortable environment where you can just sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride of self-hypnosis. Okay, so find a comfortable position to rest in. As soon as you're resting comfortably, just take a deep breath. As you breathe out, just relax and allow your mind to clear. As soon as your mind starts feeling more clear, look at your right arm. Focus on your right arm. When you get a sense of connection to it, you can really sense your right arm. Just go ahead and close your eyes. Now, at this point, begin to suggest to yourself that your right arm is relaxing. Use a calm, soothing, and purposeful tone of voice. Go ahead and do that now. Very good. Remember, every time you suggest that your arm is relaxing, feeling heavier, calmer, and so on, make a suggestion, and then notice what happens in the arm. It doesn't matter what happens. Just notice the response. Arm is relaxing. Check in. Arm is relaxing, relaxing, relaxing. Check in. Arm is relaxing. Check in. Next stage is to allow some pleasant scene or memory to come to mind. Something that will help you to relax even more. Let the feeling of relaxation from your arm spread like a glow into your body. That's it. Really let your mind think about some pleasant scene, some pleasant memory. Like a daydream. And now, begin to slowly, meticulously, comfortably, and with utter conviction to tell yourself, I am mastering the power of self-hypnosis for my life. And really get a sense what that means. I am mastering the power of self-hypnosis for my life. And really get a sense of what that means. And continue to do this, or by yourself. Very good. Now we're coming to the end of this particular hypnotic process. So just remind yourself, you're calm, peaceful, and happy, and you have this amazing future waiting for you. Calm, peaceful, and happy, with an amazing future awaiting you. Then count from 1 to 5. At a count of 3, bring yourself more and more aware of your body. At count of 4, begin to stretch. Count of 5, open your eyes feeling refreshed, relaxed, alert. Simply fantastic. And congratulate yourself on having had yet another powerful hypnotic adventure. Every time you practice the power of self-hypnosis, it becomes easier, quicker, and even deeper. And the connection of trust with your unconscious deepens as well, which means amazing things are waiting for you in your life. Now, as soon as you've done this and you've brought yourself all the way back out again, then just pause this recording and do the whole thing again all by yourself. Only takes 3 to 5 minutes to do, a bit longer if you really want to spend some time inside there. But really, allow yourself to experience that, having guided yourself all the way through from start to finish. And then go on to the next track, which will introduce you to what you know expect to happen. And when you're ready, just go on to the next track, which will introduce to you all the things that we'll be covering tomorrow on the Power of Self-Hypnosis for Guaranteed Results Home Study Program.